Marriage is mostly about Wi-Fi passwords and pretending you don't see receipts for $120 sushi dinners. At least, that's what I told myself every morning, while Vanessa applied her $40 foundation in our bathroom mirror, getting ready for another day at Morrison and Associates, where she worked in HR with people who thought avocado toast was a personality trait. My name is Lucas Blair, and I'm 38 years old, with the kind of face that screams reliable tech consultant who fixes your printer and never complains. I've been married to Vanessa for 3 years, engaged for one before that, and for the past 6 months, I've been living with a stranger who texts someone named Rico at 2 in the morning. Luke, we need to talk. Vanessa's voice cut through my morning coffee ritual like a rusty knife. She was standing in our kitchen doorway, perfectly dressed in her usual black power suit, holding a manila folder like it contained nuclear launch codes. About what? The fact that you've been working late every night this week, or the fact that your gym membership shows you've been there exactly 0 times this month? She didn't even flinch. That should have been my first real warning. Vanessa always flinched when caught in a lie, usually followed by that practiced laugh that sounded like wind chimes in a tornado. About our financial future, she said, walking over and placing the folder on our granite countertop. I've been thinking about asset protection. I opened the folder and nearly choked on my coffee. It was a post-nuptial agreement, professionally drafted, with more pages than most novels. The summary was simple enough. Everything I owned became ours, and her $80,000 credit card debt became mine. I flipped through pages of legal jargon that basically translated to, Lucas pays for everything forever. This thing makes me responsible for debt you racked up before we even met. It's about partnership, Luke. Marriage is about sharing everything. Sharing? Vanessa, you bought a $15,000 handbag last month and told me it was for work networking. What kind of networking requires a purse that costs more than most people's cars? She crossed her arms, and I could see the manipulation gears turning behind her perfectly applied mascara. If you really loved me, you'd sign it. Rico thinks. Who the hell is Rico? The silence stretched between us like a tightrope over a pit of broken glass. Vanessa's face went through about 6 different expressions before settling on defiant. Eric Mendoza. He works in mortgage at my company. He's been helping me understand our financial situation. Eric Rico Mendoza. I'd heard that name whispered during her late-night phone calls, seen it pop up on her phone screen when she thought I wasn't looking. Rico was apparently the kind of guy who went by a nickname that sounded like he should be selling knockoff watches from a trench coat. Let me get this straight, I said, standing up and walking around the kitchen island to face her directly. Some guy named Rico, who I've never met, thinks I should sign a legal document that makes me responsible for your debt while protecting your assets. And you think this is reasonable because I'm your wife, and you should trust me. That's when I started laughing. Not a polite chuckle or a nervous giggle, but the kind of deep, belly laugh that comes from recognizing absolute absurdity. I laughed so hard I had to lean against the counter for support. Trust you? Vanessa, you've been sneaking around for months, lying about where you go, who you talk to, and what you spend money on. And now you want me to sign a legal document that some stranger recommended? What's next? Rico thinks I should sign over my kidney? Her face flushed red, the same color as her overpriced lipstick. You're being ridiculous. I'm being ridiculous? I picked up the prenup and started tearing it in half. The sound of ripping paper was incredibly satisfying. You know what's ridiculous? Thinking I'm stupid enough to fall for this. I tore it again, and again, until the pieces were small enough to fit in our garbage disposal. Vanessa watched in horror as I turned on the water and flipped the switch, grinding her carefully crafted legal trap into pulp. You just made a huge mistake, she said, her voice shaking with rage. No, Vanessa, I just avoided one. I grabbed my jacket and keys, heading for the door. By the way, you're responsible for all those wedding vendor deposits you put on your credit cards. Consider it a learning experience about financial responsibility. The last thing I heard before closing the door was the sound of something expensive hitting the wall. My friend Vince Kowalski runs a private investigation business out of an office that smells like coffee and disappointment. He's an ex-cop who got tired of bureaucracy and decided that following cheating spouses paid better than writing speeding tickets. When I showed up at his door 3 days after the prenup incident, he took one look at my face and poured 2 glasses of bourbon. Let me guess, Vince said, settling into his creaky leather chair. The wife's been acting strange, you confronted her, and now you're wondering if you're crazy or if she's up to something. Both, probably. I told him about Rico, the prenup, and the months of suspicious behavior. Vince listened without interruption, occasionally nodding like he'd heard this story 100 times before. You want to know what she's really up to? He asked. I want to know if I'm married to a stranger or if I've just been paranoid. In my experience, those aren't mutually exclusive options. Vince pulled out a yellow legal pad and started taking notes. Give me everything. Phone calls, strange schedules, new friends, unusual expenses, everything. For the next hour, I laid out 6 months of suspicious behavior. The late nights at work that never showed up on her company calendar. The new gym membership she never used. The friends I'd never met who seemed to know intimate details about our marriage. The credit card bills for restaurants I'd never been to, and stores I'd never heard of. This Rico character, Vince said, tapping his pen against the pad. You said he works at her company? Morrison and Associates. He's in the mortgage department. And he's giving her legal advice about postnuptial agreements. Apparently. Vince made a note and underlined it twice. Luke, mortgage brokers don't typically moonlight as family law attorneys. There's something else going on here. That evening, Vince and I sat in his beat-up Honda Civic across the street from Morrison and Associates, watching employees leave the building. It felt ridiculous, like we were playing detective in a bad television show, but I needed to see Rico for myself. There, I said, pointing to a guy walking out of the building's main entrance. That's got to be him. Eric Rico Mendoza looked exactly like I'd imagined, perfectly styled hair, expensive suit that was just a little too tight, and the kind of confident walk that suggested he'd never been told no by anyone who mattered. He was talking on his phone, gesturing with his free hand like he was conducting an orchestra of his own importance. Classic type, Vince muttered. Probably drives a BMW and tells everyone he's an entrepreneur. As if on cue, Rico walked over to a custom-wrapped BMW, with flames painted on the sides. The license plate read, Rico 1. Jesus Christ, I said. It's like a parody of itself. We followed him to an upscale bar downtown, where he met Vanessa and 2 other women I recognized from her social media posts. Tara and Michelle, her work friends who always seemed to be involved in some kind of drama. Through the window, I could see them laughing and drinking expensive cocktails. Vanessa was sitting closer to Rico than seemed appropriate for a casual work friendship. And every few minutes, one of them would lean in to whisper something that made the whole table erupt in giggles. You getting a good look at your wife's new social circle? Vince asked. Yeah, and I don't like what I'm seeing. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. I showed the message to Vince, who just shook his head. Luke, your wife is sitting 50 feet away from us, drinking martinis with Mr. Flames on his BMW. She's not working late. She's lying to your face. The next morning, I woke up to find my car keyed. Someone had scratched loser into the paint on both sides, along with a few other choice words that would cost me a fortune to repair. The work was sloppy and angry, like it had been done in a hurry by someone who wanted to make a point. I called Vince, who came over to take pictures and examine the damage. This is personal, he said, running his finger along one of the scratches. Whoever did this knows you, knows your car, and knows where you live. Rico, that would be my guess. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I looked at my destroyed car, thought about Vanessa's lies, and felt something shift inside me. I'd been playing defense for months, trying to save a marriage that was already over. Maybe it was time to play offense. I'm going to fight back, I said. Vince grinned. Now you're talking my language. Vanessa, in first rule of revenge, is that it has to be smarter than your enemy. The second rule is that it has to be legal. Vince taught me both of these principles while we planned what he called Operation Reality Check in his office the next day. The key is documentation, he explained, spreading photos across his desk. We document everything they do, every lie they tell, every stupid decision they make. Then we use their own actions against them. The photos showed Vanessa and Rico at 3 different restaurants over the past week, always sitting on the same side of the booth, always touching, always looking like a couple. In one picture, Rico had his hand on her thigh. In another, they were sharing dessert with the kind of intimacy that made my stomach turn. How long has this been going on? I asked. Based on what I've observed, at least 3 months, probably longer. Vince pulled out his notebook. But here's the interesting part. I did some research on your friend Rico. He handed me a printout from the county records office. Eric Mendoza had 2 previous bankruptcies, a foreclosed house, and about $60,000 in outstanding debt to various creditors. Your wife's boyfriend is broke, Vince said. That prenup wasn't about protecting her assets. It was about dumping his debt onto you. The pieces started falling into place. Rico had been coaching Vanessa on how to manipulate me into taking responsibility for both of their financial problems. The affair was just a bonus. So what's the plan? I asked. We're going to give them exactly what they deserve. Public humiliation, professional consequences, and a reality check they'll never forget. Step 1 was simple. Cancel everything. I called our internet provider, cable company, and streaming services, removing Vanessa from all the accounts. I canceled her phone plan, her gym membership, and the credit card I'd stupidly added her 2 years ago. By the time she got home that evening, she was effectively cut off from the digital world. Luke, she screamed from the living room. What did you do to the Wi-Fi? I didn't do anything to the Wi-Fi, I called back from the kitchen. I just stopped paying for it. She stormed in, holding her phone like it was a weapon. My phone isn't working either. That's weird. Mine works fine. I held up my phone and pretended to check my messages. Maybe you should ask Rico to add you to his plan. The look on her face was worth every penny I'd spent on Vince's services. Step 2 was more creative. Vince had a contact at Rico's gym who owed him a favor from his police days. Within 24 hours, we had security footage of Rico posing in front of the mirrors, flexing and taking selfies while other gym members tried to work out around him. This is gold, Vince said, editing the footage on his laptop. Look at this guy. He spends more time taking pictures of himself than actually exercising. We uploaded the video to a fake social media account and tagged the gym's official page. Within hours, it had dozens of comments from other members complaining about Rico's behavior. The gym management asked him to find another facility. Step 3 was my personal favorite. Rico's custom BMW was his pride and joy, parked in the same spot outside his apartment building every night. Vince and I waited until 2 in the morning, then went to work. We filled the exhaust pipe with shrimp from the grocery store deli counter. We superglued the door locks, and across the hood, in bright red spray paint, we wrote "Home Wrecker" in letters big enough to be seen from space. The next morning, I drove past Rico's building, just in time to see him discover our handiwork. He was standing next to his ruined car, screaming at his phone, probably calling Vanessa to tell her about his bad luck. The smell of rotting seafood was already attracting flies, but the real masterstroke was step 4. Vince had been monitoring the office gossip network at Morrison & Associates through a contact in the accounting department. Apparently, Rico and Vanessa hadn't been as discreet as they thought. Several people had noticed their relationship, but nobody wanted to be the first to report it to management. So we helped them along. An anonymous tip to the company's ethics hotline, backed up by photos and timestamps, led to an internal investigation. Within a week, both Rico and Vanessa were called into separate meetings with human resources. How do you know all this? I asked Vince. My contact in accounting is dating someone in HR. Office romances are against company policy, especially when one person is in a position to influence the other's mortgage applications. Rico was using his relationship with Vanessa to get insider information? Looks that way. He's been approving mortgages for people who shouldn't qualify, probably getting kickbacks from real estate agents. Your wife was feeding him confidential HR information about employees' salaries and credit histories. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. It was bad enough that Vanessa was cheating on me, but she was also helping Rico commit what sounded like fraud. What happens now? I asked. Now we wait, Vince said, and we get ready for phase 2. That evening, Vanessa came home looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Her perfect makeup was smudged, her hair was disheveled, and she had the kind of desperate look that comes from watching your world collapse in real time. We need to talk, she said. About what? Your boyfriend's car troubles? I heard someone vandalized it. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out how much I knew. Luke, I made some mistakes, but we can fix this. We can work through it. Work through what exactly? The affair? The lies? The attempt to steal my assets? Or are you talking about the fraud investigation at your office? Her face went white. How do you know about that? I know about all of it, Vanessa. The question is, what are you going to do about it? She tried to move closer to me, putting on her most seductive voice. Luke, baby, you know I love you. Rico was just a mistake, a stupid, meaningless mistake. We can start over. The only thing you're good at screwing now is yourself, I said, pulling out my phone. And I've got it all recorded. I played back her confession from 30 seconds earlier, her voice clear as day admitting to mistakes and talking about Rico like he was a temporary lapse in judgment. You recorded me? I record everything now. It's amazing how much people reveal when they think nobody's listening. Vanessa's desperation turned to rage in about 2 seconds. You bastard. You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what you're dealing with. Actually, I think I do. You and Rico tried to con me into paying your debts, and when that didn't work, you decided to destroy my property and threaten me. But here's the thing, Vanessa. I'm smarter than both of you combined. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. This isn't over. Yes, it is, I called after her. It's been over for months. You just didn't know it yet. 2 weeks later, Vince called me with news that changed everything. Your wife's friends are turning on her, he said. Tara and Michelle have been spreading gossip about the affair all over Morrison and Associates. Apparently, they're more interested in being on the winning side of the drama than supporting Vanessa. What kind of gossip? The kind that ruins reputations. They're telling everyone that Vanessa was using company resources to help Rico with his mortgage fraud scheme. They're also saying she tried to manipulate you into paying for her boyfriend's debts. I met Vince at a coffee shop downtown, where he showed me screenshots of social media posts from Vanessa's former friends. Tara had posted a long rant about fake friends who use people, while Michelle had shared a meme about karma coming for cheaters. Neither mentioned Vanessa by name, but everyone who knew them would understand exactly who they were talking about. There's more, Vince said. Rico got fired yesterday. The mortgage fraud investigation found enough evidence to terminate him, and they're considering criminal charges. What about Vanessa? Suspended pending investigation. Her access to employee records is being reviewed by an outside auditor. I should have felt satisfied, but instead I felt empty. 3 years of marriage, and it had come down to this. My wife was a criminal, her boyfriend was a con artist, and her friends were gossips who'd sell her out for social media likes. Luke, there's something else you need to know, Vince said, lowering his voice. Rico's been asking around about you. He's angry about losing his job, and he blames you for everything. What kind of asking around? The kind that suggests he might try to retaliate. You need to be careful. That evening, I was working late in my home office when I heard a noise outside. Through the window, I could see someone trying to break into my car. It was Rico, and he had a baseball bat. I called 911, then grabbed my phone to record everything. Rico smashed my windshield, dented the hood, and spray-painted more profanity across the sides. He was so focused on destroying my car that he didn't notice the police cruiser pulling up behind him. Freeze! Drop the weapon! Rico spun around, still holding the bat, and for a moment I thought he might actually try to fight 2 armed police officers. Instead, he dropped the bat and put his hands up, but not before shouting loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. This is all Lucas Blair's fault. He ruined my life. He destroyed my car and got me fired. One of the officers looked up at my window, where I was still recording. I waved and held up my phone, indicating I had everything on video. 20 minutes later, Rico was in handcuffs, charged with vandalism, trespassing, and destruction of property. The police took my statement and a copy of the video, which clearly showed Rico's face and his deliberate destruction of my car. You'll need to file a report with your insurance company, one of the officers told me. But with this video evidence, you shouldn't have any trouble getting full coverage for the damages. After the police left, I called Vince to tell him what happened. Perfect, he said. Rico just gave us everything we need for the final phase, which is public humiliation on a scale that'll make his BMW incident look like a minor inconvenience. The next day, I received a call from Tara, Vanessa's former best friend. Luke, I need to talk to you, she said. There are things about Vanessa you need to know. We met at a restaurant across town, where Tara proceeded to tell me everything she knew about my wife's affair and the financial scheme she'd been planning with Rico. It started 6 months ago, Tara explained. Vanessa was complaining about your marriage, saying you were boring and didn't make enough money. Rico told her she deserved better, and he started coaching her on how to get access to your assets. The prenup was his idea? Completely. He told her it was foolproof, that once you signed it, she could divorce you and take half of everything, while sticking you with all the debt. Why are you telling me this now? Tara looked uncomfortable. Because Vanessa tried to blame me and Michelle for the office investigation. She told HR that we were jealous of her relationship and made up stories about her and Rico. She threw us under the bus to save herself. So this is revenge? This is justice. Vanessa used everyone around her, including you. She deserves whatever's coming to her. That evening, I got a text from Vanessa. Meet me at Brennan's bar. We need to talk. Brennan's was the same place where Vince and I had first seen her with Rico. I arrived to find her sitting alone in a corner booth, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Luke, thank God you came, she said as I sat down. I've been trying to reach you for days. I've been busy dealing with the police reports from your boyfriend's vandalism spree. Rico's not my boyfriend anymore. I ended it as soon as I realized what kind of person he really was. What kind of person is that, Vanessa? A user, a manipulator, someone who took advantage of me when I was vulnerable in my marriage. I almost laughed. Vulnerable? You were planning to steal my assets and dump your debt on me. That's not vulnerable, that's criminal. I never wanted to hurt you. Rico convinced me that the prenup was normal, that married couples do it all the time. Married couples don't usually involve their affair partners in legal documents. Vanessa's face crumpled, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married 3 years ago. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, start over, rebuild our trust. Trust. I pulled out my phone and showed her the video of Rico destroying my car. Your boyfriend committed a felony because I exposed your affair. You think counseling is going to fix that? He's not my boyfriend. Then why did he risk going to jail to defend your honor? Vanessa stared at the video, watching Rico swing the baseball bat at my windshield over and over again. I didn't know he was going to do that. But you're not surprised, are you? Because this is who Rico really is, and this is who you chose over your marriage. She started crying, the kind of desperate tears that come from realizing you've lost everything important. Luke, please, I'll do anything to fix this. Anything. There's nothing to fix, Vanessa. Our marriage is over. It's been over since the moment you decided to betray me with Rico. I stood up to leave, but she grabbed my arm. Wait, there's something else you need to know, about Rico's plan. What plan? He wasn't just trying to get your money. He was planning to leave town once the prenup went through. He had a job lined up in Phoenix, and he wanted me to come with him. So you were going to divorce me and disappear. That was his plan. I never agreed to it. But you didn't disagree with it either. Vanessa let go of my arm and slumped back in the booth. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know how I let it get this far. You let it get this far because you thought I was stupid enough to fall for it. You thought you could manipulate me the same way Rico manipulated you. I left her sitting there, crying into her overpriced cocktail, and walked out of Brennan's bar for the last time. The final confrontation came 3 days later, and it wasn't my idea. Vanessa showed up at my house with Rico, both of them looking desperate and angry. I was in my home office when I heard them pounding on the front door. Luke, Vanessa shouted. We know you're in there. We need to talk. I called Vince first, then 911, then started recording everything on my phone. Through the window, I could see Rico trying to force the lock on my front door while Vanessa stood behind him, gesturing wildly. Open the door, you coward, Rico yelled. You think you can ruin people's lives and hide in your house? I had installed a new security system after Rico's first vandalism incident, complete with motion-activated cameras and floodlights. As soon as he stepped onto my porch, the whole front of my house lit up like a stadium. Luke! Vanessa was crying now, her voice breaking. Please, just listen to us. We can explain everything. Explain what? I called through the door. How you tried to steal my money. How you committed fraud at your office. How your boyfriend destroyed my property. Rico kicked the door, hard enough to rattle the frame. You destroyed my life, my car, my job, my reputation, all because you couldn't handle the truth about your wife. The truth about my wife is that she's a liar and a cheat. The truth about you is that you're a criminal and a coward. That's when Rico completely lost it. He started throwing rocks at my windows, screaming profanity that would make a sailor blush. The security cameras caught everything: his face, his voice, his license plate, and most importantly, his clear intent to break into my house. Vanessa tried to stop him, but Rico pushed her away and started looking for another way inside. He went around to the backyard, where I had more cameras waiting for him. Rico, stop! Vanessa was following him, still crying. This isn't going to fix anything. Shut up. This is all your fault anyway. You said he was weak, that he'd never fight back. I recorded that confession on my phone. along with everything else they were saying. Rico was admitting to the vandalism, the fraud scheme, and the plan to steal my assets. Vanessa was admitting to her role in the whole thing. By the time the police arrived, Rico had managed to break a window in my back door and was trying to climb inside. The officers found him halfway through the window, covered in glass and still screaming threats. "Sir, step away from the window and put your hands where we can see them. This is my house," Rico shouted, apparently forgetting that he was breaking into someone else's property. "He can't keep me out of my own house." One of the officers looked at me. "Is this your house, sir?" "Yes, officer. I've never seen this man before tonight." It was technically true. I'd never seen Rico this crazy before. They arrested Rico for breaking and entering, destruction of property, and violating the restraining order I'd filed after his first attack on my car. Vanessa wasn't arrested, but she was questioned extensively about her relationship with Rico and her knowledge of his criminal activities. "Ma'am, did you know Mr. Mendoza was planning to break into this house tonight?" I just wanted to talk to my husband. I didn't know Rico was going to do this." "Your husband? Ma'am, are you separated from Mr. Blair?" It's complicated." "It's not complicated," I told the officer. "She's been living with her boyfriend for 2 weeks. She's only here because they're both facing criminal charges and they want me to drop the complaints." The officer took detailed statements from all of us, along with copies of my security footage and phone recordings. By the time they finished, it was almost midnight, and Rico was on his way to jail with bail set at $50,000. "Mr. Blair," one of the officers said as they were leaving, "you might want to consider getting a full restraining order against both of them. This kind of behavior usually escalates." After the police left, I called Vince to tell him what happened. "It's over," he said. "Rico's looking at serious jail time, and Vanessa's probably going to lose her job. The fraud investigation is still ongoing, and now she's connected to a violent criminal." "What about the divorce?" "With all this evidence, it should be straightforward. No judge is going to award her anything after what she's done." The next morning, I woke up to find my story all over social media. Someone had leaked the security footage of Rico breaking into my house, and it was being shared thousands of times with captions like, "When keeping it real goes wrong, and this is why you don't mess with IT guys." The local news picked up the story, focusing on the mortgage fraud angle and Rico's history of financial crimes. Vanessa's name was mentioned as a person of interest in the investigation, along with her suspension from Morrison and Associates. But the real vindication came 3 days later, when Tara called me with an update. "Luke, you're not going to believe this. Vanessa showed up at Michelle's apartment last night, begging for money to bail Rico out of jail." "Did Michelle help her? Are you kidding?" "Michelle told her to call her parents, and hung up on her. Vanessa's been calling everyone she knows, but nobody wants to get involved with someone who's under criminal investigation." "What about her family? Her parents cut her off when they found out about the affair. Her sister won't return her calls. She's completely alone." I should have felt sorry for her, but I didn't. Vanessa had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. 2 weeks later, I received the final piece of good news. Rico had been formally charged with mortgage fraud, breaking and entering, and destruction of property. He was looking at 3 to 5 years in prison if convicted. Vanessa had been fired from Morrison and Associates and was facing her own charges related to the fraud scheme. The divorce papers were filed that same day. With all the evidence of adultery, fraud, and criminal conspiracy, Vanessa's lawyer advised her not to contest anything. She would get nothing from our marriage except her personal belongings and her debt. I was in Vince's office, signing the final paperwork, when he looked up from his desk and grinned. "You know, Luke, when you first walked in here, I thought you were just another guy with a cheating wife. I never expected it to turn into the most satisfying case of my career." "Why's that?" "Because usually, the bad guys get away with it. The cheater takes half the assets, the boyfriend disappears, and the husband gets screwed by the system. But this time, justice actually won." I looked out Vince's window at the city below, thinking about everything that had happened over the past few months. My marriage was over. My trust in people was probably damaged forever, and I'd learned more about fraud investigation than I ever wanted to know. But I was free. Free from Vanessa's lies, Rico's schemes, and the toxic relationship that had been slowly destroying my life. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. "You know what the best part is?" I asked Vince. "What's that?" "They thought I was weak. They thought I was stupid. They thought they could manipulate me, and I'd never fight back." I stood up and shook Vince's hand. Turns out they were wrong about everything. 6 months later, Rico was sentenced to 4 years in prison for mortgage fraud and breaking and entering. Vanessa received 2 years probation and community service for her role in the fraud scheme. She moved back in with her parents and got a job at a call center, making about a quarter of what she used to earn at Morrison and Associates. I kept the house, the car, and most importantly, my self-respect. I also kept Vince as a friend, though I hoped I'd never need his professional services again. The last I heard, Vanessa was telling people that I had destroyed her life and that she was the real victim in the whole situation. Some people actually believed her, which taught me an important lesson about human nature. There will always be people who prefer comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths, but I didn't care what people believed. I knew the truth, and the truth was that I had won. Not because I was smarter or stronger or better than Vanessa and Rico, but because I had refused to be their victim. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let bad people destroy your life. Sometimes justice actually does win, even when it takes longer than you'd like and costs more than you wanted to pay. And sometimes the last laugh really is the best laugh of all.